Hey now, what's that sound I hear? That's the sound of truth, ringing clear through the darkness, through the rain, the lessons of wars, experience out on the street, with the bands for peace. Oh, let the soldier tell the story, shout it out for peace.
Greetings and salutations. This is VFP-TV and Radio, a production of Veterans for Peace, Western North Carolina, Chapter 99, with additional support from Peacetown and the War Resisters League of Asheville. If you would like to support VFP-TV and Radio, you may email us at vfptv@live.com. And my name is Ronald Hereda. I'm one of the co-producers of this show, along with Kasha Baxter. And we have David Ireland running the cameras and the Zamboni. And this is their special holiday edition of VFP TV and Radio. We're going to present a few of things that we've been saving for this special occasion. And we're going to start out with an interview that we did with Mary Olson here in Asheville. She is is she the president or the secretary? She is a regional director. That sounds good for me. She's the regional director of the Nuclear Information and Resources Service. And we shot this a couple of months ago, and I think you'll find it very informative. So please watch, and we'll be back. Greetings and salutations. My name is Ronald Hereda. I'm here with Mary Olson, who is the Southeast Regional Representative for a group called Nuclear Information and Resource Services. There's an issue that is very pressing for us here in the mountains of North Carolina, as well as worldwide, is what do we do with all the stuff that's left over from all the nuclear generating plants that are concentrated where we live? I mean, besides the plants putting off radiation, what happens to all the stuff that comes out of the plants? What do they do with it?
And I'll just add, this is in addition to the energy complex, which is most of the radioactivity, there's also the waste from making nuclear weapons, which happens in our region as well. Both Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Savannah Riverside in South Carolina have waste that we currently have neither a program nor a plan at the federal level because our president had the courage, and I will use that word courage, to cancel what would have been a failed dump in Nevada. And we can come back to why it's a failed dump, but this opens the door to what are we going to do at the, as a nation, what is our policy?
That's the infamous Yucca Mountain.
The infamous Yucca Mountain, and I have
that's
to.
Canceled.
Well, it's still a dogfight. Does the president have the authority? Well, it's in the law. But the law certainly must allow for the disqualification of a site that's not going to work.
And we've also had some experience of presidents who think they're above the law. I think as Dick Nixon said, if the president does it, that makes it legal.
Well, but that calls to question whether this action is correct. And I've looked at this issue for 20 years now. I wrote the petition to President Clinton's Secretary of Energy requesting disqualification of the Yucca site because it could not, we had hard data showing it could not meet the site criteria that were in the same law that we're talking about, and instead they just changed the criteria instead of disqualifying the site. They did that over and over again with Yucca Mountain. It was a fait accompli approach that we're just going to put a needle in the map and the waste is going to go there whether it's a good site or not. And we are talking about over 95% of the radioactivity that we've generated in the nuclear age, which is an enormous, huge, phenomenal change to our planet. It is not a little drop, drip, drop. You'll hear that the nuclear waste could all fit on one train or on one football field. Well, we don't care about how much mass it has.
Right.
We don't care how heavy it is. We care about how much cancer can it cause, how many birth defects can it cause, how many other species could it annihilate if it was distributed worldwide. You know, this stuff is mutagenic out the kazoo. So it doesn't really matter how big the pile is, it matters how intensely radioactive the pile is, and this pile that was to go to Yucca Mountain is that mother lode of radioactivity.
They used to use the term, I just wanted the clarification, the nuclear age.
Right.
When did it start?
When did the nuclear age start? Well, I guess you'd go back to Marie Curie as one of the points of source, which always makes me have to be a little more generous about talking about the boys and their toys, because she wasn't looking at weaponization. That happened during the Second World War, and certainly the Manhattan Project is viewed as the major industrial beginning of the nuclear age. But the whole idea that there's energy in atoms that can be tapped goes back into the 1800s. We had the 100th anniversary during my professional life. So, you know, we've been at this for a while. We seem to be learning slowly. Because the issue is, if you're going to put all of this waste somewhere, we want to isolate it from the environment. We don't want to put it somewhere where actually the site is going to cause it to leak more quickly. And that's what would happen in Nevada. I just want to tell you that we didn't understand when we went looking for a place to bury the waste that you had to think about the containers and how long they would last. And Yucca Mountain has salty rock, the waste is hot, there's been so much fracture of that rock by earthquake activity because there's recent volcanic activity that's ongoing at that site. And so
The nuclear age didn't just start recently. It's over 100 years. I mean, that's a lot of waste. I mean,
that's a lot of waste. And the most concentrated waste comes out of the reactors. And that's what they wanted to bury at Yucca Mountain. And when they started on the project, they didn't think about the fact that the site has had recent volcanic activity. There's so many earthquakes there that the rock is totally fractured. That means that when there is water, it's in the desert, but there is rain. And when there is water, the water moves very quickly through that rock. There is, at the level where they wanted to bury the waste, no waste was ever put there, but where they wanted to bury the waste, there are traces of the atmospheric nuclear weapons tests that were done in the South Pacific in the 1950s. The only way that that material could get there, it's very unique material, the only way it could get there is through rain traveling down through the rock. So we know that water travels through that site. So, okay, it turns out the rock is salty, water travels through, the waste is hot, there's oxygen present because it's above the water table, and the containers are made of steel. So you would do better with a Kmart store being maintained to put the waste in than putting these containers into Yucca Mountain. It's a guaranteed release probably within 300 years. So our president had courage to stand up to the whole nuclear industry and everybody else and say, no, we're not going to do that. And I support his decision on that score. We need this. I put the petition out in 1998 asking President Clinton to do that, and he didn't. So, yay, we're not going to bury the waste in Yucca Mountain. There are states that are protesting this. South Carolina and Washington are actually intervening now in the licensing process and saying that it's incorrect for the Department of Energy to withdraw the application to license this site. But where does Congress get the authority to do what that, to just categorically say this is the site if it's a bad site? The Department of Energy is being responsible by saying it's a bad site, we're going to yank the application. But now what? President Obama has instructed the Department of Energy to have a commission, a blue ribbon commission, headed by Lee Hamilton and Brent Scowcroft, famous names.
Yeah, I recognize it.
If you need someone to make something look good, get those guys. Then they have a whole panel of nuclear industry people. And they're calling it America's Blue Ribbon Commission on, start over. They're calling it the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future.
And who would know more about that than industry people? That's
Exactly. The head of the largest nuclear utility in Illinois with its 11 operating reactors is on this commission. The former head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is on this new commission. And when they had their first meeting, someone showed them maps of the history of the waste program. Well, this is where it comes in close and personal. Because in the 1980s, they were studying granite instead of Yucca Mountain. And there were 10 sites that were considered to be viable for burying this same high-level nuclear waste in granite rock. And this has the advantage that there wouldn't be oxygen present. So one of those sites is in Sandy Mush, which is Leicester, which is 20 miles from where we're sitting right now in Nashville.
No.
It was considered the best site, in fact.
What?
Yes. The best site for the nation's high-level nuclear waste dump before the decision to go to Nevada was made is right here in western North Carolina, 20 miles from where we're sitting, in Sandy Mush.
That's scary.
Yes, it is.
That's really scary.
Especially when you look at all the money that's being poured into I-26. And the fact that as soon as the Smoky Park Bridge issue is resolved, I-26 will be an interstate. Right now, it's a future interstate.
Right.
The best protection for this community, quite frankly, as dangerous it is that stupid bridge. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have our 26 connector. People have worked long and hard for it, but I want disclosure to be given. And the disclosure is that the resolving of the 26 connector is going to open the doors to umpteen nuclear shipments that are not coming through here now. There are some now, but there are thousands that could potentially come through, because the other thing the Obama administration is backing is the idea of recycling the waste first, which would happen in South Carolina across the river from Augusta in a community, a site called Savannah River Site.
Oh, yeah.
Big bomb factory.
Oh, that's how that's recycled.
I don't know. They say they want to use the plutonium for fuel. Who in their right mind would use weapons-grade material for making electricity?
Wait a minute. Let me see. The Iranians?
Or the North Koreans?
Oh, the North Koreans. Yeah, there we go.
Or the French?
The French.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
the French.
they've run out of their own tax dollars for their program, so guess where they are? Arriva is a French corporation owned by the French government that is here in the United States proposing new reactors, proposing recycling facilities, and plutonium fuel factories.
But they're not going to put it in Sandy Mush.
The leftovers after the recycling in South Carolina would come right back up, and they are widening, by the way, US 26 to interstate level of
Right.
road. And
Interstate.
they are widening, by the way, US 25, parallel to 26. 2 routes in and out of the mountains, interstate quality road. Why are they doing that?
I
And
know.
isn't it convenient that Sandy Mush is the closest repository granite site to Savannah River Site? It just becomes this nice little box set where you bring it down the hill to that red blotch in South Carolina and then back up the hill to Sandy Mush, which is, you can point to where we are.
Yeah. I know where we are.
Yeah, see that,
Let's see. Savannah River is
that red thing? Yeah.
that far away. I thought it was closer to the shore. And we are. Let's see. Right up close to
Yeah, right about
the
there.
border there.
Right about there. So they bring the waste from all of these nuclear power plants all over the country to the Savannah River Site
For recycling.
for recycling.
Recycling.
And the only thing you can reuse is that 1% that's plutonium in the waste. That's the only part that's reusable. They'll say they'll reuse the uranium, but it's not true. They will not reuse the uranium. So it's just the 1% of plutonium. They say they'll use it for nuclear fuel, but at the same time, other parts of our government want to weaponize near space.
Right.
And they're going to need a lot more plutonium to do that. So God only knows what they're really going to do with the plutonium. They don't tell anybody what they do with plutonium. That's the problem with plutonium. We have to have a full-scale security state to have plutonium be our fuel or our weapon. So here we are in western North Carolina, in Beyond the Beyond. What do we think of it as? This wonderful retreat from the world. We don't want to hear about any of this stuff.